Բարև ձեզ, եթերում Banadzevն է, վերջերս հայագիտական և ցեղասպանագիտական համայնքը հարստացավ երկու նոր գրքերով կամ ավելի շուտ մեկ գրքի երկու թարգմանությամբ, թուրքերեն և անգլերեն, որոնց հեղինակը Թաներ Akcamն է և անվանի թուրք գիտնական այսօր Banadzevi տաղավարում է. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Mr. Akcam.
It's a great pleasure.
So you are here to promote your new book, which is called Killing Order.
Yes.
As I understood right, this is the book which is exactly proves killing orders by Talat Pasha.
Yes, the major question in our field is whether or not Ottoman government ordered to exterminate the Armenians. We don't have much, what we call it in the field, smoking guns. And in this book, I introduce these smoking guns.
The Turkish government says that there were orders for this deportation, not killing, right?
Yes. Now, here is the story. The central Turkish government's argument is that it was a relocation. And Armenians were relocated during war years, and it was a measure in the war, and it's a legitimate right of every state to relocate its own citizens, and this is what Ottoman government did. But they couldn't control certain areas, the Kurdish mountains, Syrian deserts, and a lot of Armenians perished during this transportation. Whenever we claimed that it was not only simple a deportation or relocation of Armenian, but it was an extermination policy, they argued, show us the original documents that Ottoman government intentionally destroyed the Armenian genocide. For this case, there are two set-up documents that clearly shows genocidal intent of Ottoman government. One set of documents are the military tribunal materials from Istanbul. As everybody knows, during the period 1919-1921, there were several courts, trials against the perpetrator, against the Union and Progress Party, approximately 200 defendants, and there were 63 cases. 16 people were sentenced to death penalty, and 3 were hanged. And during these entire trials, there came out several important telegrams that includes killing orders or shows that the Ottoman government intentionally wanted to destroy the Armenians. There were testimonies of Ottoman generals, high-ranking army generals. There were testimonies of high-ranking Ottoman bureaucrats testifying in the court saying that they received the order from Ottoman government to exterminate Armenians, but they didn't obey the order, and so on and so forth. Where are these original documents today? They are gone. And the Ottoman government's argument and Turkish government argument was always, show us the original. So they destroy the original documents and then come up and saying that if you cannot show us the originals, so we cannot trust only indictment and verdicts, and it's not a trustworthy source.
Now you found the way to show the original documents.
Yes, here is the story of these documents. We didn't know until 2015 where original of these materials were. Or, let me put it in a different way, actually it was a public secret. Everybody knew that an important part of these original materials were in Jerusalem Armenian Patriarchate Archive. But Armenian Patriarchate Archive was closed to scholars. Only in 1970s, Hakan Dadrian was allowed to enter into the archive, and he took some of the materials, and he used very limited amount of this material in his studies. And this archive remained closed to scholars until last week. I mean, they allowed me last week to look into these materials after I published the book. In mid-1960s, an Armenian Catholic priest, Krikor Gergerian, went to Jerusalem and made extensive copies of these materials. And again, this is
the priest who wrote about Armenian genocide as well.
Yes, he didn't write much. He couldn't, because he devoted his entire life to compile materials on Armenian genocide. He published only one book on Yozgat trial, 1983, I think, in Armenian language. And after I was allowed to enter his private archive, I discovered that he prepared actually 6-7 different books, but never published. But let me finish this story with Grigor Gergeryan. This was again a public secret. Everybody knew about Grigor Gergeryan's archive, and some scholars had good connection with Gergeryan. Dadrian, for example, worked with him, and Gergeryan helped Vakın Dadrian also. And 1983, an Armenian lobbyist organization, Armenian Assembly, microfilmed the entire material. Technically, since 1983, this material were available for anybody. But there was not good working condition in Washington, and the entire archive was not catalogued. Hundreds of microfilms, and it is impossible to go through these microfilms unless you had a copy from the Armenian Assembly. And because of some reason, Armenian Assembly denied all the time to give a complete copy to the scholars. They only said that come to Washington and work here. It's impossible. Sometimes their machine were not working, or in hotel in Washington costs more than $300 in a night. I mean, scholars could not work there. And the most important part is they were not classified, the materials. And nephew Edgar Gergeryan had the original of these materials, and
where he was at the time.
He's in New York. He's in New York, still in New York. And in 2015, knowing these materials, and it's not only me, there are other scholars also were asking to have an access.
So rumor has it that there were huge material available, but somehow not available for scholars.
It's available, but the problem is there is no possibility to work on these materials. And finally, in 2015, I approached Edgar Gergeryan and told him, are you going to take all these materials to grave? Finally, it's 100 years, show me the materials. And he showed, and this is the product of the book.
That's an incredible story. How do you convince him to give it to you? Because
he
knew who you were. I mean, that you are a famous scholar, and he trusted you.
This is very important. I think my publications convinced him. I met him first time in 2000. I think again in 2002, and I asked those years about the archival materials. I told him it is impossible to work in Washington. He said, I gave all this material to Washington. Go there and you take a copy from them.
One book, is it enough for cover all the materials?
No. Here is the interesting story. Edgar, the nephew, claimed that his uncle told him that he copied everything from Jerusalem archive, which I never believed. And I approached several times to Jerusalem Patriarchate to allow me to look their materials, which they denied until the publication of my book.
So you now have access to Jerusalem's archives.
I am so thankful to the new Patriarch in Jerusalem. He was so helpful to me, and not only to me, I can announce here, they are working very hard to make all these materials, not related to genocide, but all other materials available to scholars as soon as possible. They allowed me to look into the material, and I can tell you also, Gergeryan copied only 1/3 of these materials. Not the, I mean, there.
Oh my God.
I mean, all together, there are 900, more than 900 original Ottoman materials from Istanbul court case, and Gergeryan had only 250 of them.
You also researched Ottoman archives. Was all the Armenian genocide related documents were destroyed, or there is some left?
Before coming to Ottoman archive, let me mention another important aspect of Grigor Gergeryan archive. So as I mentioned, we thought we only...
How old is Edgar now?
He passed, Grigor Gergeryan passed away 1988, and nephew Edgar in his late 80s.
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm so thankful to him to make all these materials available for us, and we are going to put everything online, and I hope within a couple of months anybody who wants to have access
The whole
to this,
archives?
whole Grigor-Gagarin archives will be on online.
Will it be interesting for the scholars to look at them?
It will be a change in the entire Armenian genocide research, because I worked only on the Ottoman materials, but there are so many English, French, and Armenian materials. Most of the materials from the Armenian Patriarchate,
Particularly about only Armenian genocide or in general?
we are talking on the what is called Patriarch Zaven materials. These are Istanbul Patriarchate's materials for the period 1919-1922. 1922, Patrick Zaven sent these materials to Manchester. From Manchester, it went to Marseille, and from Marseille, it ended up Jerusalem archive. And not only the Ottoman materials, but the materials in Armenian language and French and English are priceless, because mainly during that period, Patriarchate established a commission on Armenian genocide. There are testimonies, hundreds of pages written in Armenian language, or eyewitness account, or reports, especially after genocide, an important amount of survivors, they came back to their original places, but the living conditions were horrible there. And they sent regular reports, and Patriarchate translated these into English and French language. And there were dozens reports on the Armenian orphan and Armenian orphanages, the children who survived the genocide. Nobody looked into them.
And do you agree or disagree with the statement of New York Times when they say that you are become the Sherlock Holmes of Armenian genocide?
I think it's, yeah, I'm not so very happy with this kind of thing, but I think it explains one thing which I did. And this is what I have to tell to our listeners. As I mentioned, Turkish government's argument that there is no direct killings order of Armenians had two major claims. Number one, Istanbul materials are not available, and there is a second set of documents.
Yes.
And this is what we call in our field Naim Andonian documents. These are documents published by Aram Andonian, an Armenian intellectuals who miraculously survived the Armenian genocide. And this intellectual, Aram Andonian, met an Ottoman bureaucrat in Aleppo. His name was Naim Bey, or Naim Efendi, and he was a bureaucrat in the deportation office, Sevkiyat Müdürlüğü. And in this deportation office, and he was a guy who took bribes, he was an alcoholic, and he loved gambling. And Andonian bribed him, and Naim Efendi gave him handwritten copies of 52 original documents from Sevkiyat Müdürlüğü, from deportation office. And once when he wanted more money, Andonian told him, no, I'm not going to give you more money only for handwritten copies. Bring me some original materials. And Naim Efendi brought approximately 26 original telegrams on Armenian genocide, and Andonian published 1921 Naim Bey's memoir, what we call it, these 52 handwritten materials, his handwritings, and some of the original documents. Among these 52 documents, there are 8 killing orders, and 3 of these killing orders, we have the original version. And Andonian published these in his book, 1921. And this was the major book on Armenian genocide. Talat Pasha was ordering, destroy all Armenians, kill even the children. We have made our decision.
And how Aram Andonian is related to this book?
Aram Andonian published this book 1921, and 1983, Turkish Historical Society published a book saying that all these killing orders in Naim Andonian's book is forgery. The Aram Andonion's book and the telegrams that Aram Andonion published that belong to Talat Pasha are forgeries. They made three major claims. Number one, there is no Naim Bey. There is no such a bureaucrat. Number two, there is no such a memoir. Number three, the telegram
Are false.
Fake, published by fake, and it's done by Armenians itself.
So now you prove that there was a Naim Bey.
This is the interesting part. You know, Aram Andonion, when he took this material from Aleppo to Paris, he put all these materials in Bogosnugar library. Today they are gone. If you go today to Bogosnugar library, there is no memoir, there is no telegrams, it's gone, nobody knows.
They disappeared.
They disappeared. And this is the reason in 1983, Turkish government said, show us the original. Where is this memoir? Where is this where are these telegrams? Where is this Naim Bey?
Yeah.
So I discovered the memoir of Naim Efendi in Krikor Gergeryan's archive.
Oh my God.
This is the biggest, really important thing that this man did. Krikor Gergeryan, I learned from these archival materials, went to Paris when Aram Andonion was still alive, 1951 or 52, and made a copy of this memoir and the telegrams.
Oh my God.
And I published, in Turkish version, you have the Ottoman transcription also. In English, we skip this transcription.
Those are transcriptions.
Yes, exactly. When you see on one side, it is the Naim Efendi's handwritten Ottoman original, and on the other side, the Turkish transcription of the material. So I published this completely, and this is the material that Aram Andonion published. And I worked 1 year in Ottoman archive, actually around 6 months, very systematically. And I'm thankful, and I thank the Ottoman archival personnel from here for their really help during my work. And I discovered that Naim Bey's memoir, the topics that he was talking about are authentic. And I also discovered that the telegrams that Naim gave to Andonion were also authentic. And this was a huge discovery.
That's an incredible story. Mr. Akcam, thank you very much for your work. And
Thank you. And I think this is a major blow to Turkish denialism, the government denialist arguments. I think it's time for NGOs, civil society organizations in Turkey, in Armenia, in the world, who are fighting for truth and justice, that they took these findings as a basis of their work. Turkish government should start from the reality that there were indeed killing order of an Ottoman government, and they should really change their denialist discourse.
Mr. Akcam, thank you very much for the interview. It was extremely interesting. Սիրելի հեռուստադիտողներ, ես հիշեցնեմ, որ մենք զրուցում ենք թուրք պատմաբան Թաներ Akcam-ի հետ։ Նա վերջերս հրապարակել է գիրք, որը կոչվում է Killing Orders կամ սպանության հրամաններ։ Ըստ էության սա վերջի շրջանի հրատարակված գիրք բացահայտումներից թերևս ամենանշանակալիցն է, որովհետև հենց այս գրքով պարոն Akcam ապացուցում է, որ թուրքական կառավարությունը հրամանատվել ոչ միայն հայերի դեպորտացիայի, այլև նրանց սպանության եւ գտել է, եթե բաց եք թողել մեր զրույցը, ապա այդ բոլոր հրամանների բնօրինակները կամ դրանց պատճենները, որոնք հենց տվել են հայերին կամ հայերը գնել են այն թուրք գործչից, որը զբաղված է եղել հենց հայերի տեղահանությամբ եւ սպանությամբ։ Սա համառոտ, եթե բաց եք թողել մեր զրույցը, սա Banadzev-ն էր, իսկ այժմ գովաց, իսկ մինչև այդ ահա թե ինչի մասն խոսելու ծրագրի հաջորդ հատվածում։